Sometimes you or someone else might have a great idea for a melody, but how are you supposed to make a bass line for it if that's all there is? Well, that's exactly what you'll learn in this lesson. Hi, I'm Luke from becomeabassist.com, and if you want to learn 3 ways to do this exact thing, plus how you can use ideas from existing songs to create brand new original bass lines, then stick around. If you're just given a melody and you're asked to make a bass line for it, it's really easy to be hit with blank page syndrome. For someone with experience though, they'll listen to a melody and hear all the possibilities to make amazing music with it, and that's what we're going to tap into in this lesson. To do that though, we'll need a melody, right? So I've made a really simple 4-bar melody with a really simple drum beat. It sounds like this. Just like that, super simple. So where should you start with something like this? Well, a lot of the time, the quickest, easiest, and dirtiest way to start would just be to ask yourself, can you simply double the melody? So play the same thing that's in the melody on the bass. Now this is the first method of making a bass line if you just have a melody. And I talk about this being a type 3 bass line in my older video, the 4 types of bass lines. But let's give this a crack. Let's try playing the exact same thing as the melody. Now, sometimes this will work really well, other times it'll be okay or just fall completely flat. Now this is all right, but I think we can definitely make something at least a little bit better. These type 3 bass lines are great options if you want the song to feel kind of big and powerful, although you probably don't want to do this for an entire song. It'll probably become a bit much, but keep it in your back pocket anyway. It's a good little tool. Method 2 that you can use to create really cool bass lines is to create a chord progression and then pair it with a proven rhythmic formula that you know is going to work. There are tons of common chord progressions that you can find basically anywhere, so let's try one of the most common ones, a 6-4-1-5 progression. Now if we're thinking in terms of G minor, which this melody is in, this will give us G minor, E flat, B flat, and F. Yeah, so G minor, E flat, B flat, F. That's our progression. And so if that's our chord progression, what can we play for the rhythm? Now I go through 6 of these in another video of mine, 6 proven rhythmic formulas for killer bass lines, but we just need one, so let's keep it simple and just use constant 8th notes. So if we have a bar of each of our chords, we'll end up with this kind of bass line, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. Let's try it with the melody and just see how it feels. Just experiment, see if it sounds good. Okay. All right, so I like everything in there except the last chord. The last chord is an F. Yeah, but the melody is a G there. So it's okay, it doesn't not work, but I want to try and find something else and see if we can find a better fit. So let's experiment, let's just try some things out, see if they work. Oh. Gonna keep the same first 3 chords, E flat, B flat, let's try a D. Oh, that's okay, don't love it. Let's try going back down to the G. No, I don't like that. Going back to the G. Let's try a C. I like that. Let's keep doing that. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. Yeah, I like that the best of anything so far. So let's just keep that. Okay, so great. We've got G, E flat, B flat, and C. Super into it. We started with something that didn't work 100% it was okay, so we just tried some other stuff until it did sound 100% okay. This is totally fine when you're creating bass lines, plus it's a ton of fun, it's just part of the process. Let's also talk about pulling creative inspiration from other places though. This is something that tons of professional songwriters do, and if you do it right, it's totally invisible. You know that saying that good artists borrow but great artists steal? This is definitely a thing, and I want to show you how to do it. Now obviously you don't ever want to steal a bass line note for note and kind of claim it as your own, that's like straight up plagiarism, but you can take the kind of feel or the vibe of a bass line or a song and put it in your own music. So let's creatively borrow from Paul Simon's You Can Call Me Al. Now if you know the original bass line, you'll know it sounds something like this. 2, 3, 4, 3, something like that. Now we're not going to copy this bass line note for note, but we can kind of borrow parts of it, remix it into our own kind of thing. So let's take the rhythm of that and use it as the basis for our bass line. So ba-ga-ga-ga-da, ba-ga-da-ba-da, yeah? Ba-ga-da-ba-da, ba-ga-da-da, something like that. Now if that's our rhythm, the next question then becomes, what notes should you use with it? Well, you can creatively borrow those as well and use chord progressions from other songs. So let's say you loved Michael Jackson and you wanted to use the chord progression from the last part of Thriller. It goes C sharp minor, then goes A, F sharp, sus, down to F sharp. Yeah, sounds like this. 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 3, and yeah, just like that. Now we're in the key of G minor, so if we transpose it, we'll get this. We'll get 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, and 2, 3. G minor, E flat, C sus, and C, just like that. Now let's combine those two ideas, the rhythm of Call Me Al with the chord progression of Thriller, and see how it sounds. Yeah, we could just play the roots of the chords with the rhythm like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, and 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, and. But it's kind of a little bit dull and it doesn't really outline the chords that well. So let's instead go over the first chord like this. Oh, something like that. And then the next chord, the E flat, just like that. Yeah, then that. So C sus, just like that. It kind of just brings out the qualities of the chords a little bit better, and that would work really, really well. Now, if you wanted to get really fancy, you could play all the inversions of these chords just like this. So you go 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, and. So everything's always based off that G. So this is the G minor chord, sorry, and then the E flat, G, B flat, E flat, then the C sus, G, C, F, and then the C major chord based on the G, G, C, E, just like that. And if you wanted to mask the rhythm of the bass line a little bit, you could do that too. So instead of going ba-ga-ga, ba-ga, you might go ba-ga-ga-da-da, or something like that. 3, and 3, 4, 3, and something like that. Yeah, makes sense? Alright, so that sounds okay by itself. Let's see how it works with the melody and make sure it's actually going to sound good. 3, and. There it is. Yeah? Okay, awesome. The notes all work great, works with the melody. Although if you were dead set on using that rhythm in the bass line, yeah, you'd probably want to modify the drum groove at least a little bit, just so it sits better and there's kind of a bit more connection between the drums and the bass. Now, by the way, there's an almost unlimited number of rhythmic ideas and definitely an unlimited number of chord progressions. And if you combine the two and do it in creative ways, then you'll always have some amazing ideas to build bass lines underneath a melody. Now, method 3. If you're pretty good with chords and theory and all that kind of stuff, then this method is perfect for you. And that's to go through the melody, find all the most important notes, and experiment with building chords around them in a very methodical way. So in this melody, to me, the most important notes are that one, they land on that one, that one, and that one. Yeah, so they're always landing on beat 1 of the bar. High G, the C right here, and then the 2 low Gs. These are the notes that we're going to look at and build chords around. There are a million ways that you can do this. You can treat each important note as a root, a third, a seventh, a fifth, even start looking at the kind of upper extensions of a chord. If you really get into this method, you end up with tons of options, but the downside is that it can be a tiny bit overwhelming. So let's keep things simple to start. We can try making each of the important notes, let's just say a major chord. So G major, C major, G major twice. Yeah, so da 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 da. Now this does not work very well, especially those G major chords at the end, but why not? It's because the chord G major has this B natural in it, while the melody is in G minor, it has this B flat, so these notes, they're clashing really bad. So let's make our G major chords, let's make them G minor chords, and just see if it works better. 1, 3, da, 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 da. Yeah, that totally works better. And having this C as a major chord rather than minor chord, it almost makes it feel like kind of a funk thing, like a G minor 7 going to a C7 chord. And actually, if we turn that, let's actually turn that last G minor chord into a C7 chord. That'd be really cool. Let's try that. Da, 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 da. Yeah, I really like that. That's really cool. Another option is if you wanted to make it kind of a bit more sad and have a bit more melancholy flavor, you could turn that C7 chord into a C minor chord as well. That'd sound like this. Da, 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 da. Yeah, just like that. Now all of these are options, and we've only just treated the important harmonic notes as roots so far. We're only just getting started. Remember as well that you're always free to change the groove underneath the melody if the bass line needs it, yeah? If something sounds like a kind of funk progression, you can morph the song in that direction. If you end up creating something really sad and melancholy, you can change the song so it fits. If you end up going in a completely different direction with the song, that can be totally fine. Let's go further though. What if each important note was the third of a chord? So let's try it. Now obviously you've got two kinds of thirds, your major and your minor. So now you've got two options for every note. So let's try and play around a little, see how they feel. Our first important note, yeah, that G can either sound like this, yeah, with that note there, so the E flat underneath, or it can sound like this. Yeah, the E flat or the E natural. The E flat would give us kind of an E flat major chord, which we've actually used before, and it's definitely more within the key of G minor. But the E underneath, that works really well too. If you use the other notes from the key, you could think of this E as being kind of like a diminished triad maybe, or a half diminished seventh chord, yeah, or even a C major chord, or a C7 chord with an E in the bass. What about our next important melody note? That C right there. We can either put an A natural underneath it, yeah, or an A flat, or maybe A and A flat. Now again, the A is within the key of G minor, and that could be part of, again, an A diminished chord would work, or even an F chord with an A in the bass. Kind of like, I really like that. Yeah, but the A flat, that could be an A flat major chord. I really like the sound of that as well. So we have these options to put underneath the C, and of course the two Gs at the end. Yeah, we can, same thing, we can have the E flat or the E just like from the first G. Now from here you can mix and match these options to see how they feel and fit. You might start with E flat major chord for the first G, and then A flat for the C, and then go E flat again, and then try this. Yeah, E for the last one. That's kind of cool. You could even use the idea of the C major or a C7 for the last G. Yeah, C major, that's pretty cool, I like that. Do you see how all the options this method gives you? We've only just used the root and the third to harmonize these melody notes, and we already have a ton of harmony we can use to inspire our bass lines. Now, of course, from here you can use some of the rhythmic formulas I mentioned before, or you can get inspired and borrow ideas from other places. It's a really cool way of doing things if you know how chords and keys are structured and how they work. Of course, if you come up with a bass line, sometimes you're still not sure if it's any good, and if that's the case, then you should totally download my bass lines from scratch checklist. If you can go through the checklist and tick most of the boxes, then chances are that your bass line is a good one and it is ready. Of course, you can always keep tweaking, but the bass lines from scratch checklist, it'll keep you on a good, solid path. You can download it for free underneath this lesson. To recap really quickly though, you learned 3 methods of making a bass line if you only have the melody to go off. You learned the quickest, easiest, and dirtiest method is just to double the melody on your bass. Then you learned that you could create a chord progression and simply plug in a rhythm that you know is going to work. And you also applied this to creatively borrowing ideas from other songs too. And finally, you learned that you could treat every important note of the melody as a note to build chords around, and how that will give you a ton of options to work with for creating a great bass line. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate having you with me. Make sure and download the bass lines from scratch checklist to make sure every bass line you create from now on will be a bass line that you can really be proud of. I'm Luke from becomeabassist.com, and I'll catch you in another video soon.